All right, so squats are one of the most popular exercises there are when it comes to, strength training for the body, especially these days. Squats are very, very popular. You can do squats with free weights like a big barbell across your back. As you see in the video here, I'm just doing body weight squats, specifically pause squats, which you've probably seen me doing in a few videos now because I do those to help the squats to be more challenging and more stimulating to the muscle. But the question for this video is, do squats actually build glutes and hamstrings? Now, the reason why I asked this question is because I've always heard a couple of different things. One, squats are a great lower body exercise that they target the muscles of the lower body, and kind of overall are a good exercise. Then I've heard some wind of no, they're actually not as good for anything else except for like the quadriceps. The quads, by the way, y'all, are the front of your thigh. It's four muscles that are on the front, along the front of your thigh. So I just did a little bit of research, and this is some of the stuff I had to study whenever I became certified as a personal trainer back in 2015. But I had kind of had to dig back into some of that to kind of see like how do these muscle groups work? What is their function? And with the squat move, do do squats indeed work your your glutes and your hamstrings? We know they work the quads, but do they work the glutes and the hamstrings as well? So check this out real quick. All right, so let's really talk about this whole squat mechanics conversation, if you will. Let me write that out here. Squat mechanics. So it goes a whole lot more depth than what I'm going to talk about here in this video. But I just want to talk about this so we can kind of get an idea, at least a very broad idea of what in the world is going on. So you see here, this is like the top of a squat where you're standing pretty much straight, and then the bottom of a squat where you literally squat down. Now, let's talk again about what these different movements do. So what do the quads, not movements, muscles. So you have your quadriceps, which are the front of your legs, the front of like your what we usually think about when we think about the thighs, the front of the thigh. Then you have your hamstrings, which I've just called hams, and those are in the back of the thigh. I have those in yellow. Then you have your glutes. We pretty much know what those are. That's like your butt. It's in the back here. Now, what do the different muscles do? So the quads do the following. So the quads extend the knee. If you're familiar with the exercise called a leg extension, where you're sitting down and you bring your lower leg up, you'll even feel the quads, the front of your thigh kind of flexing. So that means that's just like if you were to bring this up. Okay. So that's what a knee extension is. That's what knee extension is. Then the quads also flex the hip. Oh yeah, by the way, this is the hip. This is a hip right here. Let me actually write that stuff in here. So this is the hip, this is the knee, hip and knee. Well, so you get the idea. All right, so let's keep on going. So when we say flex the hip, that means specifically like bringing the knee toward the chest. So that's like bringing the knee um toward the chest. So it's like bringing this that way. Okay. So are we extending the knee during in other words bringing the knee up, I mean bringing this lower leg up during the squat? No, we're not. But are we flexing the hip? In other words, are we bringing the knee toward the chest? We are. So between this move, the top of a squat, and the bottom of a squat, literally as you go down, you are bringing the knee closer and closer to the chest. So this is major squat, I mean major movement for the quads when you do a squat. And keep in mind that your quads are attached here at the knee and like at the hip. And again, this is a very general description. So I'm not gonna give all the specific insertion attachment kind of stuff because that's not my expertise. But we do learn about this as personal trainers to a degree. Now, so there is gonna be some you're pulling down here as you lower, you're going down here at the hip with gravity, and then you're pulling that knee up toward the chest. And so you're getting a lot of quad activation, whenever you're coming down and when you're going up. So you're literally pulling both ways when you go down and up whenever you're doing squats. All right. Now, I forget that this thing kind of messes up whenever I erase it, so I can't use that anymore. So what about sorry, give me a second here. So what about the hamstring? So let me put my drawings back. So you have this circle here, and then let me put my colors back here. So we had the quad, and then you had the ham. All right, so what about the hamstrings? So the hamstrings flex the knee. So that is essentially bringing the lower leg back this way. So it's like the opposite of extending the knee. So it's like if you're doing like a hamstring curl, if you're familiar with that move, um, that's a very big hamstring move. All right, and then they also extend the hip. So hip extension is specifically whenever you pull your leg back. So it's like taking this whole leg right here and bringing it back this way. So you do that whenever you do like it's like a type of like if you when you're walking and you pull your leg back there, your whole straight leg, that is extending the hip. Or also like another way of seeing hip extension is if you're pushing your excuse me, if you're pushing your hip forward, that is also akin to like, extending your hip. Okay. And then another thing to note is this is an antagonist with the quadriceps. So basically when the quads are flexing, when the quads are working, the hamstrings are kind of relaxing. Um and that's very important to note. Let me see. And then I also say this they provide stability. So do squats flex the knee? So in other words, do squats bring the knee this way? So it kind of looks like it when you lower yourself in a squat, but actually what's more so happening is as you lower that, the bulk of the activity is going to be here because you're not actually really like bringing the lower leg this way by like physically moving your leg. You're more so like you're just lowering your body, and so the bulk of the stress is going to be on your quadricep. So this isn't necessarily um happening in this way. It's the hip being extended. Now if you at the top of your squat uh push your pelvis forward, you're getting a little bit of hip extension, a little bit, but not much. Not much unless you really squeeze. And even then, you're still not really doing that with weight. The weight is still being more so um taken on by your quads when you lower your body here. And because the hamstrings are an antagonist with the quadriceps, and that means whenever the quads are working, then the hamstrings are more so relaxing. So because the quads really are working at the bottom as you lower into the move, um, as well as whenever you are coming out of the move. Because that's what's going on, then the hamstrings are not really working very much in the actual movement of the squat. So I just say, I put an X and say not much. They're kind of providing some general stability, but it's really more so of what muscle group is handling the weight, and that's really the quadriceps. All right, so how about the glutes? Because we always hear that squats are a major glute exercise. So the glutes stabilize the upper body. The glutes extend the hip, just like we said that hamstrings extend the hip. Remember, hip extension is this right here. Whenever you push your uh pelvis out, that's extending the hip. So definitely getting some glute activation if you squeeze at the top. And then they abduct the thigh. Let me hold on a second. Okay, so abduct the thigh. That means that they move they move it away from the body. So basically, when we're talking about abducting the thigh, that's actually if you have like that's like, let me draw this really quickly because this is kind of, if this is you here, this is a front view. This is your hips. These two are your knees. Of course, these are feet here. So literally, hip abduction is moving the leg this way. Okay. So that's what hip abduction is. And then these also, the glutes also extend the hip. So I wrote that twice, but yeah. So let's you get that here. All right. So anyhow, sorry, let me erase this here. All right, good. So the question is, do um do one more thing that's important to note here is that, let me get my pencil again. So how do I say this? They're very important with explosive lower body movements, like jumping. I just say jumping, etc., because like sprinting or anything like that, they're very important with those explosive type movements, as well as when you're coming out of a squat, and that really is a type of hip extension. Even though the quads are handling a whole lot of that, the glutes actually are doing a lot of that too, because like when you're pushing that weight up, you're pushing it with your quads and your glutes. But because your hamstrings are an antagonist muscle with your quads, your hamstrings actually still aren't doing a whole lot with that. You have to target your hamstrings a lot more directly with what you would call like good mornings, where you're just kind of lowering your body at the waist and then extending up. That's going to do your hamstrings a bit. Like more pure hip extension is going to do that, but your glutes are going to help to pull you out of the squat. Your glutes are going to be working whenever you push your hips forward at the top of the squat as well. But they actually are activated a bit more too. Again, the main muscle exercise though is indeed going to be your quad. So hopefully that helps a general provide a general kind of explanation of the mechanics of it all. All right, yeah. So in short, squats really are quad dominant, but but they do work the butt. They work the glutes pretty extensively as well. Hamstrings more so appear to be a stabilizer. Now, I want you to do this too, and you see me squatting again. I want you to practice a squat move, and I want you to actually hold your hand around your thigh if you can, and feel the activation. What you'll notice is that the top few first inches of the move and when you're going down, you'll feel your hamstring, the back of your leg, activate a bit. You will feel some, but then you'll feel it kind of let in a bit. You feel it like relax. And then it becomes more of like that opposing muscle to the flexing quadricep. And so what I'm saying is there's a little bit of activation there in the hamstring at the top of the move. But then aside from that, well, the reason for that is because the top of the squat, especially if you lean back, the top of the squat is kind of like a hinge. It's a hip hinge where you are kind of like basically moving your pelvis backward and forward. It's kind of that part. That's a hinge. And hip hinge is going to use a lot of those muscles in the back, the glutes and the hamstrings. So then after those first few inches, then it's mostly quads. The lower back is stabilizing. You come down to the bottom of the move. Now, when you have your butt back, when your butt goes back, then when you are coming out of that move, it's like your butt is almost kind of like pushing you back into the start movement. So again, you have some level of hinging, but at that point, the glutes are really going to like pull you back up. The glutes are very, as I said in that little explanation, the glutes are very important when it comes to helping you to do explosive movements. Um, and so even you kind of coming out of a squat or whatever, like your glutes are kind of helping to push you out of that move, especially though if you were leaning back, like you were sitting in a chair. Now, if you're kind of like just going straight down in your squat, then you're going to be leaning forward at the knee, and because you're at at the knee part, then it's going to be more quads. So the more you lean back, the more that you get the more that you get glute activation. The more you lean forward, the more you get quad activation. But either way, both glutes and quads are activated pretty significantly when it comes to the squat. Hamstrings, not so much. Minimally, they kind of more so stabilize. So it probably is a good idea to do something like reverse leg lifts where you're kind of coming back like this, leaning bringing your whole leg back. So those are like glute kickbacks or whatever you can call them that. But those work your glutes and your hamstrings. And you could also do something like um good mornings. It's a similar move where you just kind of stand. It's like a straight leg deadlift. Now I don't know. I guess you could do that with body weight as well, but it may not be as effective. But anyhow, just moves like that are gonna cause you to have to like pull with your hamstrings are going to essentially, what do we say, extend the hip, which is bringing your leg backwards. Okay, any move like that. All right. Hopefully this helps. I didn't want to get too much in the weeds. Kind of a different video than what I normally put, but yes, squats are mainly gonna do quads and glutes. Hopefully y'all this helps.